It's the worst way possible to actually reform this government. It can't work.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. And Mr. Lanci, you have 1:30 remaining.
Thank you very much. Well, we've heard it. We continue to hear it, the political bickering back and forth. He said, she said. And when you're talking about real reform, I have to ask myself, who is connected to who, who's doing what, and how are we going to change what we've been doing? Now, you can connect the dots as well as I can. You've got Mr. Mason, who is a friend of Mr. Scipione's, who worked on the charter with him. You have Mr. Mason, okay, who is a friend of Mr. Fitzgerald. You have Mr. Mason, who is a friend of Mr. Zanotti, who is now a friend of Mr. Dolan. Now let me explain something. This is pretty simple. It's anybody but Lanci. Anybody but Lanci. Lanci is the only guy who's put his own money in. Lanci is the only guy who owes nobody anything. Lanci's the only guy none of them can control. That scares him because the machine goes down when I get in. Now you want change? You want reform? You voted for reform. I'm reform. I'm working for you, all of you. I don't see Republicans or Democrats, and I don't see skin color. I see the opportunity, finally, in the new government to work for you, all the people. Lanci, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lanci. And Mr. Scipione, you have 2 minutes remaining for your rebuttal.
Oh, gee whiz, great. Thank you very much. I am interested. One of the first questions I asked was, how much money is it going to cost? Well, and I didn't get nearly enough. So money is important. It was important to me. Now, you've heard people creating hundreds of jobs. We need to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, and that's what my platform, that's what this is going to do. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. And now, this Mason stuff, I mean, give me a break. The first time I met Bill Mason was a year and a half ago. I sat in maybe 20 meetings with him. The only advice he gave me was not to run. Ken, give me a break. You did the pay-to-play deal with Zach Reed at Luke Easter Park to try and stop me from getting the signatures. You filed a suit at the Board of Elections saying that I was a Democrat and not an independent, and they voted 4-0 against you. Give me a break. We're not going to split the Italian vote. I'm Italian in the vein of Marconi and Michelangelo and Galileo and Enrico Fermi. That's my Italian heritage. All right, now what was I going to say before that? I forgot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scipione. And we'll now return for our traditional City Club question and answer period, where the questions that are addressed to all the candidates will be answered by each candidate, and they'll have 30 seconds. Questions addressed to a specific candidate will be answered by that candidate in 30 seconds, and then I'll call on one or two others so that we're able to have as many candidates as possible respond to as many questions as possible. And to the audience, I thank you in advance for keeping your questions brief and making them questions, and for giving our candidates the time to answer the questions without any interruptions from the audience. If anyone has something to say, I suggest you turn it into a question for the panel. And I believe we have our first one over here.
This is a question to all 6 candidates. If you are fortunate enough or unfortunate enough to win this election and be the next county executive, and you had to select your chief of staff or first aide from your rivals, who would you pick?
Why don't we begin with Mr. Dolan and work our way left?
I would choose Don Scipione for 2 reasons. One, he's got a good handle on IT, and that he was a leader in issue 6 charter reform. If we're going to move past this cloud, we need people engaged in the idea that reform is here and we need to continue to pursue it.
Mr. Ellison?
I would ask Tim McCormack to be my chief of staff because he knows, I think, the county better than any of the other candidates, and I trust him. I think he has the most level head of any of the candidates, and I wouldn't hesitate to ask him.
Mr. Fitzgerald?
Well, I'd be tempted to choose some people just so I could fire them, but I would probably, I'd probably choose Mr. Scipione. He's an idealist. He is somebody that I think has high integrity. He has a record of service to the community, and I feel comfortable saying something positive about him because I don't think he's going to win.
Mr. Lanci?
Well, I would have said Mr. Scipione also, except that I can't get past his $200 million savings without a plan. The business card isn't enough for me. So I would actually support Mr. McCormack because of his vast knowledge of the county, and I think as a partner he would do a great job.
Mr. McCormack?
We said last night, asked a similar question, and I mean this. There is not a person up here, and I'll answer the question directly, but that I would not seek out to work with. Each has great strengths. Each could be very, very helpful. Matt Dolan reminds me most of the person I would invite back, who would be Tom Hayes, who is the best administrator I know. I think Matt's temperament is very good.
Mr. Scipione?
I would look at Ken because at $1 a year, it's hard.
Okay. Let's see if we can get another question from the audience.
I would consider him. I would pick Tim McCormack for his knowledge of county government.
And do we have another question from the audience? Yes.
Mr. Fitzgerald, question for you is, how would you forge an economic partnership with the city of Cleveland? How would you work together with the city?
Sure. I think that's a great question. I have a good working relationship with Mayor Jackson. I think it's very important to understand that the new county charter doesn't take powers away from the city or any city because they're guaranteed those powers under home rule under the Ohio Constitution. So there are certain areas of economic cooperation and certain assets that we share together. For instance, the Port Authority of the City of Cleveland, there's about 3 appointments that will come from the county executive. There will be 6 that are currently made by the city, and we've got to try to come up with a joint plan that we can agree to together so that we can cooperate on areas such as the port.
I'll also let Mr. Lanci and Mr. Scipione respond to that question, starting with you, Mr. Lanci.
Sure. I think that it would be, as an independent, I think it will be much easier for me to bring people together. I have skin in the game. I am working for $1, so I do have a vested interest in this county. And not being Republican or Democrat, I've made deals for well over 40 years. Nobody wears a red shirt or a blue shirt. And I've been successful there. I believe I could be successful here.
And Mr. Scipione?
Frank Jackson is a hero of mine. I'm one of the first business people to step out and urge him to run the first time. Worked hard for his campaign. I've known him for 20, 30 years through Midtown. He was our Ward 5 councilman. I trust him. I know his word is good. He can trust me. He knows my word is good.
Let's see if we can get another question from the audience.
Greetings to the panel. Cuyahoga County has approximately 10,000 individuals returning from state prisons a year. Many of these individuals face sanctions because of their previous conviction. Would you, as county executive, consider appointing a position of reentry ombudsman to deal with the many issues and to help folks deal with the many issues that they face because they bear the burden of a felony conviction?
Thanks for the question, and we're going to start from my far left, Mr. Scipione.